My name is Bob D'Imperio. I'm the president of the Board of Education for the Lake Mills Area School District. I'd like to call this budgetary hearing to order. This hearing is done in conjunction with the annual meeting, which is a statutory requirement for each Wisconsin school district. And Ms. Wendy Brockert will be conducting the hearing. Ms. Brockert?
Thank you. So for tonight's presentation, I'll be going through the annual report, and then there was another handout that was my slides, so just making sure that you saw both those handouts for the meeting. So, as Bob said, this is the budget hearing for the Lake Mills Area School District. In tonight's presentation, I'll be going through how school districts account for the budget, the different funds, and our functions. Also, I'll be talking about factors that are impacting the 2021 budget. I'll go through the revenue limit worksheet. I'll go through our revenue and expense budget, including our post-employment benefit trust, and then I'll end with the property tax. So school districts in the state of Wisconsin, accounting principles involve different funds, and we use the 7 funds that are listed here. And if you want to see the definitions for funds as well as functions, it's on page 9 of the book. But just to quickly highlight them, the general fund is where most of our expenditures are. So most of the salaries, benefits, transportation, operation, maintenance, all that, those different areas are all found in the general fund. We use Fund 20 to show we have a gift account in there. And this year when we get to that area of the budget, you'll see it's grown from previous years. And part of that is because of GASB 84. We had to make some changes in how we account for activity funds, and that got shifted to the 21 fund. And then also in Fund 20, we have the 27 fund, which is our special education program. Fund 30 is our long-term debt, so our bonds from when we passed a referendum, and then there is also a small bond in there also that was not approved by referendum. And when we get to the revenue limit, you'll see that the 38 fund, that debt payment has to fall within the revenue limit. But there's 2 parts that we use in the 30 fund. Fund 40 is our capital projects fund, and when we get to the annual meeting, there'll be a separate levy motion for that 41 fund, and that's one of the powers of the annual meeting. That levy is part of the revenue limit. It's not outside of the revenue limit, but it is something that we have to approve separately. Also in Fund 40, when I get to that, you'll see that we have the 49 fund. I mean, the expenses and revenues are all being lumped together, but another piece of the 40 fund is the 49 fund, which is the accounting for our referendum project. So when we received the revenue the previous school year, and then this year we've been paying the contractors for the building addition as well as the outdoor facility, and that ran through the 49 fund. Fund 50 is our food service fund, which is pretty self-explanatory. Fund 70, we have a small portion there for scholarships because that too, some of that got shifted to the 21 fund because of GASB. And then we also account for our post-employment benefit trust in the Fund 70. And then lastly, we also have the Fund 80, and that's where we have our community recreation program. And of these 7 funds, we levy in the general fund, the 30 funds, the 41 fund, which I talked about, and then the 80 fund. So not all of these funds we levy in, we only do some of them. So in some examples, like the 27 fund or special ed fund, we have to transfer money from the 10 fund into the 27 fund to balance that account because we can't levy in the 27 fund. Most of the other funds are self-sufficient, like the gift fund and the 50 fund, but there's that one instance with the 27 fund we transfer. Oops, I think I got too far. Oh. Okay. So factors impacting our budget include, we budgeted for stable enrollment this year. Currently, we budgeted a no increase in the revenue cap, and I'll show you that when we get to the revenue limit. Our per pupil aid allocation remains at $742 per member. When the budget was passed, the biennium budget was passed last year, the per pupil aid was $742 per member. And as I'm indicating later, we also were allowed to, right now the way current law is, our revenue limit is allowed to go up $179. To be conservative, the board budgeted a 0 increase there, and in October, we will review that. Some other changes in this year's budget is we added a math teacher and an English teacher at the high school due to enrollment changes and shifts at the high school, the growth. And then we also added a .25 additional middle school music teacher. As I started to hint at, in October, we'll review the budget and we'll calculate the actual revenue limit per member. We will find out in October the actual general aid, which when I get to the revenue limit, I'll show you where that falls in. And right now, the estimate is it might increase about $300,000. And again, we'll update that revenue limit, and if law stays the way it is right now, the revenue limit would go up about $179, and so that increase in aid would balance out that increase in the revenue limit per member. We'll also update our actual enrollments in September. Our equalized value we'll find out October 1. And then there's another piece in the revenue limit. You'll see the private school voucher aid and computer aid and personal property aid. So all those pieces we'll find out for sure by mid-October. And then the other changes we always make in October is we find out final numbers for some grants, and then we update the wages, benefits, and other grant expenditures at that time that fall into those grants. So now we're going to get to the revenue limit, which starts on page 10, but the page I'm going through is on page 11 of the annual meeting booklet. And the revenue limit calculation is something we have to do each year. It's a limit on what we can levy, and the pieces of it is the general aid and the property tax levy. So what it is it's a calculation based on our 3-year membership enrollment multiplied times a per member amount. And if come October we're able to increase our revenue limit per member like is planned, line 4, which right now shows 0, would show $179. The other piece on this slide is just 10I, which says SNSP private school voucher aid deduction. So that's the private school voucher program that we are able to levy to cover that expense, and then that is deducted from our aid payments in June. And moving down on that same page, so we have our new revenue limit calculation, which is $15,503,639. We then we use the October 15th aid certification, which on this example shows 12A at $8,506,951. Plus, it also is showing 12C and D is the computer aid and the personal property aid. And again, these numbers all get updated October 15th. So we add those three numbers together, and we subtract that from line 11 to find out what our maximum levy is, which in this example is $6,939,832. We then break that out into three separate components. One is the general fund levy, which is the largest. You can see that on 14A, $6,572,457. We have the non-referendum debt. So when I was talking about the different funds, Fund 38 is, we have $1 million loan that was used for some updates to the high school back in like 2015, 2016. So we have that debt payment because it didn't go to referendum. And then again, the 41 fund, that capital expansion fund, which we'll be approving later today, is $150,000. In addition to that levy, we also have the 39 fund, which is the referendum-approved debt, and also our community service fund, or Fund 80. So the total levy then is $9,940,338, and the estimate under this is 9.05 mils. So once we get that calculation, then we use those dollars to build our revenue budget. And this starts on page 12 and continues into page 13 as I go through these numbers in the revenues. You can see partway down the local sources, 210, that's our property tax, but it also includes the mobile home taxes. Another item I want to point out is 340, payments for services, and that is our open enrollment in. So students that attend here under the open enrollment program are coded there. Again, going down some more on that page, 620, state aid general. That's that equalization aid that I talked about when I was showing you the revenue limit. And then I didn't talk about this with the revenue limit, but 690, other revenue, that's our per pupil aid. Right now we get $742 per member, and that I talked about early when I was talking about the factors. Again, when we find out our actual enrollments, this number will be adjusted. And there has been talk because of the budget issues in the state that the legislature could adjust that per pupil aid, but right now the way it is it's $742. So our total revenues for the general fund are $17,570,648. And this pie chart just highlights the different categories of revenue, and it's obvious when you look at it that you can see the biggest portion is our state aid, our general aid, and then the next biggest is the property taxes. Then moving along on page 13, our expenditures. This first portion in our general fund are the instructional costs. The undifferentiated curriculum are areas like in the elementary school where you have a teacher that teaches multiple subjects. And then the regular curriculum are mainly the teachers at the middle school and high school where one teacher teaches social studies and one teaches English and another teacher teaches music. So it includes all of the core courses that you think of like English, math, social studies, science, but it also includes like music and the world languages and so some of those other areas as well. And I think the other ones are pretty easy to understand. There's the Voc Ed and Phi Ed, and then the co-curricular activities. And then the pie chart just breaks it out so you can see how the dimensions work. The support services are programs that the school district provides that support the instructional teaching and learning in our district. So like pupil services would include guidance counselors, and when we get to the 27 fund, it also includes like the school psychologist and our social worker. 220 is like our library media services. It also is professional development and instructional support for our staff. Another large item, very large item in this area is the $250,000 business administration. So in addition to the business functions of the district, it includes like transportation, utilities, maintenance, operation, and those kind of things. So it's not just the business office functions. Looking at the $400,000, which is non-program expenses, the 410, the interfund transfer, that's the funds that we transfer from the 10 fund into the 27 fund. And so because we can't levy in the 27 fund, we have to transfer from the general fund to balance that account. And then the 430, that line item is primarily open enrollment out. So students that go to our district, students that live in our district that go to other districts, that's part of in that line item. Also, it includes like payments if we have students attend another district, like we have an alternative high school program, or if students go to Madison College for some classes. So other programs that our students are involved with. So our total expenditures for this year's budget is $17,870,877. Looking at the 21 fund, as I explained when we were talking about funds, this is our gift account. And you can see in the middle column that it's grown a lot over the previous year, and then again, carrying forward into this year. This was new for us this year, and so this will probably be an item that gets adjusted a little bit in October as well, because we're still trying to gauge all the activity account that traditionally had been in the 60 fund that's now here, all the activity that they do. So think about like your classes, your like freshman class, sophomore class, junior class, those type of examples, as well as the music activity account. And so many things have shifted to the 21 fund, which is why there's the big growth. And again, this is not a fund that we levy in. Looking at the 27 fund, and this is on like page 14 in the book. Again, this is all of our special education costs. So the very first item is that transfer in, because we can't levy in this fund. Some of the revenues we do get for special ed is in the 600s, the state sources. So that's like handicapped aid. So the cost of our special ed teachers and their benefits, a portion of that we do get funding for from the state level. We also, the 700s, that are some special education grants geared specifically towards special education. And then the 780, that's $70,000, that's our Medicaid. We do apply for some Medicaid funding. So the total revenue for 27 fund is $3,384,197. And then moving on to page 15, the expenditures. Again, the instruction piece are those special education teachers that work with our special education staff. So it's the instruction for special education. And then the support sources include like the occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychs, our guidance. A portion of our guidance counselors are in that code. In the 220 includes like our director of special education and her department, and the 250,000 business administration there includes our transportation for special education specifically. And so in this fund, you'll see that the 27 fund revenue balances with the expenditures being $3,384,197. Try and keep them up here. I'm sorry if I was behind. So this is the Fund 38 and 39, and this is on the middle of page 15. So again, these are our debt service for the bonds, our long-term notes and bonds that we have. We have 6 different bond debt issues, and those are towards the back of the annual meeting booklet if you are interested in what they all are. They include our bond from referendums from 2008, the middle school referendum, when we added on and remodeled the middle school, our 2012, our elementary school, to the 2018 referendum where we added on to this high school, as well as doing the outdoor facility. And then the 38 fund is the high school improvements that were done, and that was, it was primarily like some HVAC systems and those type of things at the high school. And again, the 38 fund, like I mentioned when we looked at the revenue limit, is paid within the revenue limit. This is the 41 and 49 fund, which is capital projects, and this is on page 15. So 150,000 of the revenue and expenditures is that 41 fund piece that we'll have as a separate levy in the annual meeting. And the rest of the expenses and revenues here are reflective of the referendum, the high school project. And I highlighted for you some of the things we did in 2019-20, which were the replacement of the rooftop unit for the high school auditorium, which we're in right now. We resurfaced and repaired some of the high school tennis courts. And outside of the 41 fund, we did receive a safety grant, and so we did some updates to our PA system at the high school for safety reasons. And then the 49 portion is the high school addition and outdoor facility. And in addition, outside of that, in the general fund, we also did some roofing. In this coming year, we're in the midst of it right now, replacing a ventilation system in the high school locker room. We resurfaced part of the high school parking lot, and then with funds available yet, looking at doing some high school roofing later on in the year, and then completing the referendum project, which is the 49 portion. Our 50 fund is our food service fund. We have had a very successful program the last several years, and this spring we were fortunate to provide meals for the students in the community, even though our school buildings themselves were closed, and that was a very successful program, and we appreciate the flexibility of our food service staff and being able to provide meals, breakfast, lunch, and for our students in our community. The community service expenses is the 80 fund, and our program has expanded more this year than what we had the previous year. So page 16, I believe this is on page 16, but then on page 17 in the annual meeting booklet, we explain the variety of programs that our 80 fund does. This year we added, this past year that we're ending, the before and after school care program, which was very popular, and it was really great that we were able to provide a need for our families in the community. And we also added the senior center. So we are working with Club 55 in offering more programs for our seniors in our community. The district also does have Fund 73, an employee benefit trust fund, and this is funding some post-employment benefits for our staff. And this is just a summary of the two different trusts that we have. One is for a health insurance, which that trust will be ending in the next 8 years or so because staff won't be eligible for that anymore. And then the other one, the post-employment pension trust, provides some like 403B benefits and the 403B benefits for staff when they retire. And lastly, I just want to highlight the property tax and mill rate. And these numbers were shown on the revenue limit calculation, but here I have it broken out by fund again. So with the general fund and in the various funds totaling $9,940,338. And again, this will get reviewed in October when we find out our actual revenue limit calculation. This next slide just shows you our property tax levy over the last 11 years, and you can see it's been pretty stable between 8 and 10 million over the last 11 years. This slide is the same, it's again 11-year history, but it's the mill rate. So the mill rate looks at the levy divided by the equalized value of the district. The numbers that are, the line that's like a reddish color, that's the state average. And so you can see we've been staying most years within the state average. The 2012 is a little higher. That's when we passed our elementary school referendum. And then things balanced out again, or a little below. And this chart, it's not in the book, but I'm a numbers person, and I just love to look at this kind of data. This is just showing, since 1984, what our total levy's been, what our total equalized value has been over the years, and our equalized rate, our mill rate. So just, again, some historical information. And this is information you can find at the Department of Public and Instruction website. They've got all kinds of longitudinal data, but I like this just to compare things, and it also shows like the state average, and these numbers were used in that previous chart. So So I appreciate your patience. Tonight I went through some of the factors that are affecting our budget this coming year. I talked about the revenue limit calculation, our revenues and our expenditures, all of our funds, how the school accounting works, and then I ended with the tax levy. So I appreciate your patience and attentiveness, and if you have any questions, I'm open. Feel free to ask. Oh. That's per year. Yep. It's at $742 that you said? Yeah, that's what we received this past year, and we're hoping to get it again this year per member. And what they do is we look at, I didn't show you as a slide that first page of the revenue limit, but what it does is it looks at our 3-year average, and it takes that number times $742. Okay. And it's full-time members, so like our 4K program is, the students that attend are 0.6, so, it's averaged that way too. I know the light's really on me, so if I'm missing someone. All right. Well, thank you very much. In a couple minutes, we'll be starting the annual meeting.
Well, I'd like to call the annual meeting of the Lake Mills Area School District to order. I would like to point out that the agenda for this meeting is noted in the packet of information that was available when you walked in. On page 2 is the agenda. All voters in the school district are able to vote on items that are appearing on the agenda. And so at this time, I would ask for a verification of the public meeting notice for both the hearing and the meeting. Mr. David Radel.
Yeah, the meeting was posted for the past 2 weeks, both in the Lake Mills Leader and on the district website.
Thank you. Now, we would like to elect a chairman pro tem to conduct the meeting. I will now take nominations from the floor for that position. Do I hear a nomination? Yes.
I'll nominate Sandy Whistler.
Sandy Whistler has been nominated. Do we have any other nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I move the nominations be closed. And all those in favor of Ms. Whistler serving as chairman pro tem signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Whistler, the floor is yours.
The motions that we are going to be covering tonight are on the screen before you and are on pages 7 and 8 in your packet. When making a motion or seconding a motion, please state your first and last name so they can be recorded in the minutes. So the first thing I'll do is entertain a motion for action item D, which is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a person who would like to make that motion? If so, please stand and state your name.
David Radel, 765 Sheridan Ave. I move that there be and hereby are assigned is levied and assessed against all taxable properties, both real and personal, within the confines of the Lake Mills Area School District, and irreparable, irrepealable tax in the amount of $9,790,338 to be applied to the operational budget and to adequately cover any and all long-term obligations.
Okay, is there a second for that motion? Doug Fritsch has seconded the motion. So it has been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Or aye? All opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion has passed. I think we skipped ahead and did not entertain the motion for action item D. That's okay, Dave. But we should formally adopt the agenda. So if someone would make a motion to adopt the agenda for the evening, that would be great. Diane Fritsch? Okay. Okay. All right. Someone to second the motion, please? Second, Bob D'Imperio. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion has carried. Then we'll jump ahead to action item F, which is, are we on F now on the screen? Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is the resolution authorizing the school board to establish a 2020-2021 school year sinking fund for capital expenses based on Wisconsin Statute 120.10. Is there someone who would make that motion? Please. Okay, Wendy Brockert has made a motion to approve the resolution. Is there someone who will second that motion? By Amy Litcher. Any discussion? It has been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Any discussion? Since there is no discussion, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The motion has passed. We'll move on and entertain a motion for action item G, which is to authorize the investment of general fund monies on a short-term basis. Who would like to make that motion?
Amy Litcher, be it resolved that the school district funds will be invested per school board policy if and when the opportunity exists.
Thank you. There's someone to second that motion?
Second, Tasha Naylor.
Tasha Naylor seconds the motion. It has been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? With there being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The motion has passed. Our next motion is the one to set the salaries of the Board of Education based on Wisconsin Statute 120.10. The current salaries are $1,625 per year. Is there someone who would like to make that motion? Your name, please? Okay, I couldn't quite hear you. Okay, she's made the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Pam Cordy has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor of setting the salaries at $1,625 indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion has passed. Then we'll move on to the next motion, which is the one to authorize the Board of Education to provide school lunches.
Be it resolved that the Lake Mills Area School District Board provide a lunch program in accordance with state and federal regulations and requirements, such as the district is allowed to collect all possible receipts in said program from the state and federal government. The difference between the aid received and the total cost of the program should be collected through student and employee receipts paid for by said students and employees who participate in the lunch program. A transfer from the general fund to this fund may be necessary and is allowed if total receipts do not match total expenses.
And is there a second for that motion? Second by Bob D'Imperio. It has been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The motion has passed. We'll move on to the next motion, which is the one to authorize the sale or disposal of surplus personal property. Is there someone who would like to make that motion? Okay. Wendy Brockert has made the motion to authorize the sale or disposal of surplus personal property. Is there a second to the motion? Tasha Naylor has seconded it. Is there, if there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion has passed. Next, we will entertain a motion to authorize the lease of school property not needed for school purposes. Is there someone who would make that motion, please?
Be it resolved that the school board be allowed to lease school-sized buildings and equipment not needed for school purposes.
Amy Litcher has made the motion. Is there a second for this motion? Okay. Mary Doyle has seconded the motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? Since there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The motion has passed. Our next motion is one to authorize to provide for athletic accident insurance. Is there someone who would like to make that motion? Doug Fritsch? Okay. Is there someone who would like to second that motion? Amy Litcher seconds. It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution to provide for athletic accident insurance. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. I guess I like to say aye. It's aye, isn't it? Sorry about that. I want to make it rhyme. And all those opposed say nay. Okay, the motion has passed. The last motion that we have is the motion to set the hour of the budgetary hearing and annual meeting for 2021. Is there someone who would like to make that motion? Wendy? Okay, is there someone who would like to second that motion? Dave Radel seconds the motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion has passed. Is there any other business to come before this annual meeting? Being no further business brought before this meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Dave has moved. Is there a second for that motion? Okay, Bob has seconded. Is anyone not in favor? All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Being no further business before this meeting, we are concluded. I want to thank you all for attending and being interested in learning about what happens in our school district. Thank you.
We can begin the meeting. This is a special meeting of the Lake Mills Area School District Board of Education. Welcome to our virtual guests. We are connected. And the mission statement for the district is to prepare all today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. I would ask for a verification of the meeting notice.
Yes, it was posted on the Lake Mills Area School District website and at the Lake Mills Post Office.
Okay, and I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And if we could begin with if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please?
Rachel Davies.
Here.
John Delaney.
Here.
Amy Lister.
Here.
David Radel.
Here.
Robert Cicero.
Here. Okay, we're moving into the community input. We have had 4 people register to speak. Our total time allotment is 15 minutes, so with 4 people, and we will limit each person to 3 minutes. So I don't think we'll have to extend this at this time. Megan will have a timer. So when you hear the timer go off, you will know your 3 minutes are up. So in order. Oh, yes. I'm reminded that you should state your name and address prior to your remarks. Tom Beschel? I'm sorry, and if I mispronounce your name, sir, I'm sorry.
Tom Beekle, North 6617 Short Hills Road, Lake Mills, Wisconsin. Our communities have had a challenging year. COVID-19 has stressed many of us, especially our children. The most recent events have added more strain upon a taxed community and a school board. Deeply saddens my heart along with others. Humans are notorious for error when they happen, and we all must be held accountable. When a team member does not perform up to standard, the team needs to act to be accountable, whether it is on an individual basis or done together. Personally, I embrace together and like the meaning of the acronym TEAM. Together we achieve more. The past is a powerful lesson despite how painful some of it can be. If we lack historical recollection, the differentiate between what is perceived to be right may not be and lead to identical tragedy. History enables us to teach right from wrong even though we still fail once in a while. However, we must realize that good always triumphs in the end. Human persecution affects many worldwide. It is our job as a community to unroot any evil like this by drowning it with good acts. If we are to triumph, we will need to do several things that I believe God would want to see of us. Whether you believe in the Almighty is your choice, but if I can get you to believe the greatness behind the meaningful lessons that will be just as effective to make Lake Mills and the world a better place. We must unify to act with faith, hope, and love. As a community addresses the things we do not understand and deem unrighteous and seek to make them right. At the same time, we need to act kindly to those that disagree and work with them toward a better cause. Have you heard this verse, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself? Has any of us approached the individual that paraded the flag from the past to find out why? Do we know their surroundings or upbringing? Do they really understand the causal effect in a community such as ours? I would speculate that this was not the first time it happened and that we all had plenty of time to act. Please remember that any dilemma should be peacefully addressed with acts of kindness, empathy, and love. They are the solution to dampen any evil present and begin the transformation process to heal oneself and others. As Charlie Daniels would say, the path of righteousness is a long uphill, rocky way, but it always takes you home. We must pray for those that are lost in darkness to help them see the light, offering plenty of kindness and love along the way. As a team, let us work together to solve the issues, not just speak of them. Do not walk away, do not point fingers, do not curse about them, do not name call, do not prejudge, do not distract or hide them. We are all imperfect beings that miscalculate. Therefore, as a team, we need to assist those that are blindly committing wrongful acts by suppressing them with good ones, while at the same time raise those up that are oppressed by such wrongdoing. As a community, let's move forward to be accountable for our actions and start compassionately working together as a team to treat everyone as we would expect to be treated. Let's act in good faith, pray for hope of a better tomorrow, and continue to douse the flames of evil by supersizing love for one another. Team, it's time to heal and get along, despite our personal backgrounds or differences. This will strengthen our community and show others that we can lead with the most powerful acts. Faith, hope, and love that will in turn make things righteous and enrich the lives of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Don Kisha.
All right, my name is Dominic Gisha. Address too? 132 East Oak Street. I'm here on behalf of the Lake Mills Education Association this evening. First, I would like to thank you for your tireless work, School Board and Superintendent Olson, during these unprecedented times. As professional educators in the Lake Mills Area School District, we are dedicated to providing the best education for our students and to ensuring a positive and safe learning and working environment for LMASD students, staff, and families. With the health and safety of our students and community in mind, we urge our district leadership to press pause on planning for in-person learning in September and refocus their efforts on bolstering virtual learning opportunities in acknowledgement of this unpredictable, ongoing pandemic. Many unknown factors remain regarding the transmission and long-term negative health effects of COVID-19. Based on the criteria set forth by the Badger Bounce Back Plan and the most current data and recommendations from health professionals, including the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, the Centers for Disease Control, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, there are numerous barriers to the safe implementation of a face-to-face educational model in September. Consequently, we urge the district to proactively adopt a virtual model for the start of the 2021 school year. We share the desire of families and students to return to the classroom and firmly believe that in-person instruction is the best model when we are not in the midst of a pandemic. However, the proposed in-person learning model would not be a return to the normal that we all miss, as it would include mask wearing, social distancing measures, and reduced social opportunities throughout the day. When also considering the challenges our district will face regarding adequate staffing and support for a safe in-person model, the logistics of students returning to our prospective school buildings is neither a responsible nor viable option. We sincerely want to be back in our classrooms with our students, but first and foremost, we need to keep our students, staff, and community safe. It is also important to mention that if your proposed plan is adopted, there are several teachers in our district who will resign to protect themselves and their families. We firmly believe that the push to go back into physical classrooms is not worth the loss of dedicated staff members. We are proud to be part of a district whose mission reflects a commitment to children, excellence, in the community. Our district leadership is being called upon to make difficult decisions on behalf of its many stakeholders. There is no easy solution, but we believe that virtual learning is currently the only option that provides a sustainable plan for providing a rigorous, high-quality educational experience while keeping students, staff, and community members safe. We are confident that with this plan and the collective efforts of all involved, we can rise to meet the challenges of this unprecedented time through a coordinated response that the board, administration, staff, students, families, and our community can support. The LMEA advocates for beginning the 2021 school year with a virtual learning model and with a clearly outlined plan for a return to in-person instruction when it is truly safe to do so. By embracing a virtual model now, staff and families will have additional time to prepare and implement creative solutions to address the challenges posed by COVID-19 until it is safe to return to in-person instruction. Attached to the letter that all the board members have in their emails, you will find a list of 69 LMASD teachers and staff, both members and non-members of LMEA, that support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Janelle, sorry.
Janelle Pauley, 1041 High Street. And I'm here again as a concerned citizen to continue the dialogue from the last school board meeting. A bunch of us met yesterday and we recognize that these are unprecedented times. Out of respect and consideration for the board having to deal with COVID and the school reopening, we've decided to reduce the number of speakers at tonight's meeting. But do not take the reduced volume tonight as an indication that we no longer want action. There are still a lot of questions that have to be answered. We have to seek truth, and we deserve answers. Why didn't the Vice President of the Board of Education seek facts about a situation prior to passing judgment? Why did Rachel believe the protester? Was it because the protester is black? Was it because Rachel's judgment is clouded by her personal political agendas? Why did she say in all caps that the false narrative was on purpose? What is going to happen when the same situation plays out in this school and there isn't a video to prove what truly happened? Again, will school administration under Rachel Davies' leadership be able to decipher fact from fiction to apply logic? The silence over the past 3 weeks does not convince me that it can. Rachel posted publicly, but there has been no public apology or public explanation. Why? Is this acceptable? Is the rest of the board okay with this? Is the school administration okay with this? Is this what we should expect from public education in Lake Mills? And even further, is this conduct acceptable if it came from a student? Will this situation be brought up and used against administration when disciplinary actions are disputed by students or staff? And I also want to say that I think this board should be leaders in bringing our community together. But we are even further divided than we were 2 weeks ago. We can't even find common ground in calling out what is unacceptable yet. Rachel hasn't taken ownership of her actions. How do we even move forward and prevent this from happening again when she won't even recognize or admit wrongdoing? And this wasn't just about a protest. She violated the board's bylaws by posting about COVID. We can't have changes to policies and then call that a solution unless we know that the policies are going to be followed. We still have a school board member with some pretty significant biases and prejudice that has produced an extreme rush to judgment instead of seeking out facts. Is this board endorsing this kind of conduct by being silent? Is this rush to judgment going to bleed into other school issues like student safety? I have to wonder. This board should be leading students in learning how to learn. Students should be learning how to sift through the noisy media and the information age to seek facts and truth. I'm not convinced that the board is succeeding in doing that with Rachel as VP. I do not personally think that Rachel deserves a lifetime ban. I'm not a fan of cancel culture, but the facts show that she is currently unable to fulfill her duties as an elected official. She should step away, apologize to the community, and show a history of changed behavior before she can be trusted to make critical decisions. This board should have credibility and integrity.
Amy Janzi.
Hi, I'm Amy Jancy, 226 West Madison Street in Lake Mills. I wanted to say thank you, every school board member here, for taking the time that you do, which is quite a bit of your time, not only while you're here, but also while you're researching the issues that are going to come before you. And so that's what I wanted to point out, is that it's really a lot of work. And there shouldn't be this chilling effect where if someone wants to run for school board, they have to think to themselves, well, maybe one of these days I'm going to get really upset about something that I feel may be threatening my family and post something on Facebook. This shouldn't be the status quo that we want to have right now. These are very challenging times. These are very emotional times. And if you look, actually I did a little research on censorship votes for school boards in Wisconsin. I didn't find anything similar to this. The cases where social media have resulted in a censorship involved a gentleman who posted over many years, a number of times in both Twitter and Facebook about racially insensitive things. And so there was a pattern here. It wasn't one comment. There was a long-standing pattern. The closest example I could find was one where a school board member said, school personnel are like cattle, you just have to hit them with a 2x4 once in a while to get their attention. That was actually in a school board meeting though. And as you can hear there, it actually relates to teachers. So but that was a one-off, and otherwise he was a very respected school board member and had been for many years. So the school board today has a choice, right? You can either decide to censure someone who's highly qualified, has done great work, or you can just take this moment to help level set, reset our expectations, and, as someone was mentioning earlier, have some empathy for the situation. We're all in this together, right? Everyone is here tonight because we care about public education, about the students of Lake Mills. So I'm hoping that the board tonight will act in the example that we really want to see here, to be contemplative and hopefully not discourage further members of our community from taking these leadership positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the approval of the Lake Mills Area School District's reopening plan for the 2021 school year. Dr. Olson.
Thank you. First of all, I want to acknowledge Dom and the Teachers Union and the rest of our teaching and support staff. I know a lot of school districts in the state are in an almost impossible situation, really weighing the needs of the students and the family, but also knowing that we have incredible staff that have to come in and teach our students as well. So I think if you ask me on the side of an educator, my opinion, versus the side of a parent or a grandparent, as in my opinion, I think I could see definitely both sides of this issue. We've also conducted 2 parent surveys to gain information to see what families in Lake Mills are asking for. Our latest survey closed this morning at about 7 o'clock this morning when I got to work. The results from the survey represented about 1,000 children in our district. So we had a very overwhelming response in a short amount of time. With the results of that survey, we have about 75% of our families asking for 5-day in-person, face-to-face instruction in the classroom. We have about another 20% of families asking for the virtual model, and probably another 5% that are undecided at this time and are waiting for more information from the district. It is interesting, I think, the predicament that we're in, because being this close between Dane County and Milwaukee County, where the county health departments have come out and put mandates at the county level, which makes it impossible for school districts in Dane County and Milwaukee County to open. That's why right next door you'll be seeing that I think almost all of the school districts will be starting with a virtual model. With those mandates in place, they are unable to go back face-to-face. So we are challenged with the decision about what do we do with our students here in Lake Mills. At this point, from last week's meeting, our stance is still that we will be returning to school in person 5 days a week, face-to-face, but we are also offering parents a virtual option. That way, parents are able to make the decision for what's best for their family. We also understand that there are many parents that are unable to stay home from work, are unable to provide childcare options, are unable to teach their children in a home environment, and we want to acknowledge that as well. The highlights that we had on the slide really encompassed all of the areas from food service to transportation to how are we handling locker use in the schools to PPE for our staff. That is probably also one of the more controversial parts of our plan, or of any of the school districts in Wisconsin as they try to reopen. One thing we have decided, with working with the newly hired Jefferson County epidemiologist and with working with our teaching staff, is that we will be requiring face coverings for students and staff. It is one of the largest ways that we can mitigate risk as we bring all of our students back to the classroom. Now, in our plan, we are outlining what that means as far as face coverings. According to the epidemiologist, when students are in a contained environment such as a classroom, and I think most of you know the size of our high school classrooms, even with face coverings on, it is very difficult to guarantee student and staff safety, which is why we are requiring face coverings. There are other opportunities during the school day, especially in a wider open environment, that face mask won't be necessary if we can have social distancing occur. So, with that being said, like I said, it was just trying to mitigate risk as much as possible for our staff. Now we see the results of the medical research that show that children can be carriers of COVID, but aren't getting a COVID diagnosis as much as adults do. So with a majority of our staff being in that age range where they are more susceptible to catching COVID, we do need to take every step we can to mitigate that risk. The one part of the plan that is not developed yet is actually that virtual learning portion, and that's because we were waiting for the results of the survey to come back this morning. We're really looking to see what kind of numbers do we have per grade level to see what kind of robust program we could build. So right now, as we looked at the numbers of parents requesting virtual instruction for their children, we're averaging about 20 to 25 students per grade level, which is actually encouraging because that does help us be able to staff that with our current staff. It helps to reduce the numbers of our class sizes for the in-person instruction and really build out a robust virtual learning program. So we are turning around tomorrow and really starting to work with the administrators and also our virtual learning core group of teachers to continue to build that out. Once we have that done, which we are expecting to have completed, my goal is by Thursday, real honestly, we will put out that information in a complete document. It will look very much like the slideshow if you're a parent in the district that was sent out this week, but it will be in a handbook format with everything outlined. We're also including the details about what happens if a student contracts COVID. What do we do if a teacher contracts COVID? That is the information that we're working with the Jefferson County epidemiologist on. I am not a doctor. I can't write those plans. So we're really looking to the science community to say, how do we handle those? How do we do the contact tracing? And where do we go from there? I'm going to be real honest with you. Looking at other cases around the state and looking at other states that have already or will be starting school, we need to expect that we would have a full closure at any given time. If for some reason there's community spread, we need to be ready to move back to a virtual model instantaneously, much like we did last year. We are already planning for that as well because we don't want to be caught with an immediate closure. So we're still planning for multiple scenarios at this time, right up to the start of the school year, but that is currently how we are starting school. Registration will be open on August 1st during the online registration. Parents will make their choice of picking the in-person model or the virtual learning model, and at that point we will make staffing decisions once we have those solid numbers for the virtual learning program. Any questions?
And I was wondering, are there any efforts being made to make the virtual experience less isolating for kids?
Yes, that was a little bit more difficult because we weren't sure, are we going to have 5 students per grade level? Are we going to have 30 students per grade level? So I was really happy to see those numbers coming back around 20 to 25 because that is a typical class size throughout our school district. So I think we could really have a viable virtual option like last time. Now we have gotten mixed feedback from parents. There's a lot in our survey, a lot of parents asked for the synchronous learning. They wanted it to feel like a live classroom. I've got a whole subset of parents that are saying, no, we have to still work during the day even though our kids won't be attending school, so we need to be able to do that schooling after school at night with them. So the goal is once registration is finished and we actually have names attached to the virtual learning selection, Amanda Thompson will be sending out a survey to those parents and we will get more feedback as we develop the virtual program.
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion for the adoption of the plan.
I move the board approve the reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. The floor is open for discussion. No, I'm sorry, this is not a public meeting. This is a meeting of the board, and the public is invited but not invited to participate in this discussion.
I would add that you can, please feel free to contact me. I know I've received several emails and phone calls asking specific questions about the plan, so I'd be willing anytime this week to entertain those questions or even feedback. We have taken the feedback into account as we are working through the plan, so please contact me here in the district office.
I think the plan put forth by the administrative team is best as under the bad circumstances we are in, is a very good plan, so.
I guess I have a question, well, I know I have a question about teachers who aren't comfortable going into the classroom. And what are we going to do if we have more students who want the face-to-face option, but fewer teachers who are comfortable coming into the classroom?
So that is something that Wendy Brockert and I are working on across the state. That is the key question, I can say, from participating in quite a few legal seminars. So all the districts are working on what do you do in that situation. So we are working through the different options. We will have to staff our virtual school option. That is one possibility for some staff. Obviously, not everybody can do that. We are also working on some handbook revisions, which I talked a little bit briefly with Dom about extending the rights that anybody in a workplace has. So the FFCRA leave, extended family medical leave, leave through ADA if you have a disability, and then also possibly requesting a leave of absence. So we will outline all of those for staff so they can make a choice that's best for them. We definitely don't want to lose any staff whatsoever, but I also understand that people have different circumstances. We're definitely trying to accommodate those different circumstances as much as we possibly can.
You know, it seems to me that in the current environment, we are faced with almost an impossible choice. But it's a choice that we have to make. And I think that the goal here is not to eliminate risk, because we can't do that. But if we can mitigate and reduce it and be flexible, understanding that next week, what we know today may be way different. So I think with the assurance that we are in a position to be flexible, and I hate to use the word pivot, but that seems to be very topical these days. I think that we have to move forward with this and be willing to, as I said, to make changes. And I've read a lot of emails from folks, and I've heard comments here, and I get it. I understand all the concerns and the needs, and they're just in conflict with no matter what we do. So I think we need to move forward. If there's more discussion, otherwise I'd call the question and have a roll call.
Nay. John Delaney? Nay.
Amy Litchard?
Yes.
David Riddle?
Yes.
Robert Contiero?
Aye. Motion carries 3-2. The next item on the agenda is a discussion and potential action to censure a board member for a breach of policy. To introduce this, I would like to read a draft which I think frames the question to a certain extent. And that is, whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board has adopted a policy that addresses parliamentary authority of the board in Board Policy 060161, and whereas that policy sets forth a parliamentary procedure governing the Lake Mills Area School District Board for the orderly conduct of meetings, and that shall be Robert's Rules of Order. And whereas Robert's Rules of Order contains a process for censure of an individual member of the board, and whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board has adopted a policy that addresses public expression of board members in Board Policy 0143.1, and that policy unequivocally states that sometimes the public statements by a board member imply, or the reader listeners infer, that the opinions expressed or statements made are the official positions of the board. And whereas board member Ms. Rachel Davies made public comments concerning the opening of school in June of this year and an incident in Commons Park in July of this year, and whereas such comments and statements were not statements of the Lake Mills Area School District School Board or staff, and whereas the Lake Mills Area School Board does not condone or agree with such statements, whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board has adopted belief statements, among the others holds that we believe that all of our students and their families are important. Therefore, it is the responsibility of everyone in the learning community to build relationships and trust with their students and families. And whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board seeks to have meaningful, insightful, and respectful dialogue with its community members to advance the cause of public education and educational opportunity in Lake Mills and in Wisconsin, and strive to achieve the ideals in the district's belief statements. And whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board seeks to have meaningful, insightful, and respectful dialogue with its community members to build relationships that address issues of racial justice, tolerance, and acceptance. And whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board believes the comments of Ms. Davies hinder the district's ability to build relationships and trust with the district's students and their families. Now, therefore, the school board of the Lake Mills Area School District, by this motion, censures Ms. Davies for the statements and comments referenced herein. The Lake Mills Area School District Board, by adopting this motion to censure, is hopeful that this will be an opportunity for Ms. Davies to reflect upon the tenor of her comments and the statements and how such comments and statements could hinder the school board and the school district's ability to fulfill the aspirations set forth in the district's belief statements. So it is possible this motion could be adopted. If it is not adopted, the discussion on this will cease. We'll be open for any other motions. So what's your pleasure?
I move to accept the censure document as read.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, please.
Do I get to say anything?
Of course.
Okay, great. So, I've been on this board for a while, and you all sit in board meetings with me, and you all know and can attest to the fact that I ask a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions. I get to the bottom of everything. I make sure that we're all of a common understanding before we vote on anything. I make sure that anything that we're talking about serves to the best interests of our students and of our parents and of our teachers and of our community. I always do that, and you all know that. In any of our meetings, I ask a lot of questions and make sure that that's what's happening. While I'm not fulfilling my board commitment or serving as a board member, such as like when I'm getting groceries with my kids or taking my kids to school or to the doctor or the dentist, or while I'm at work or taking my pet to the vet or putting gas in my car, or whatever else I do on my own time, I'm a private citizen. When a person is elected to the school board, they do not cease to be a parent. They do not cease to be concerned for their child. Anything that I post on my personal Facebook page, I am very sure that the language that I use to talk about my kids or my family is in there. I do not ever speak as a board member. I'm allowed to express my concern for my children, and it's a freedom, and it's called freedom of speech. Being a concerned mom is never wrong. I did not call anyone out by name in my post. I did not say anything about a specific person. I did not say anything about anything specific. I merely talked about my concern for my kids and my family in this community. Calling out racism is never wrong. Likewise, it's important to understand the definition of racism. A simple way to understand that is racism equals prejudice plus power. By definition, racism is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. Contrary to the narrative that is out there, I did not make racist comments. I was calling out racism. It was an anti-racism post. I would venture to guess that racism is something that doesn't really affect your lives, and it isn't something that you think about very often while going through your daily routine. But just because it doesn't affect you because of the color of your skin or that of your children doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It does exist. I've had many people of color reach out to me recently to share their experiences, their stories of growing up here. And many parents share their children's experiences. How many of you have had community members share those kinds of stories with you? Community members of color, community members with children of color. How many people have come to you all to talk about that? I would venture very few, if none. How many of you have ever felt that fear that only a parent has when something bad could or is about to happen? Now put that kind of fear, that thought that something bad could happen, and pair it with your child simply walking around downtown or sitting in the park. Let that sink in a minute. Just because you've never had that thought or couldn't imagine that happening here does not mean it's not a reality for some of our community members, because it is. Talk to students of color. Talk to people of color who have graduated from here. Talk to them. They will tell you it is a reality. And my children are children of color. So please don't pass judgment on a mom who had a moment, who just needed to say something about the racism in this community. It was an anti-racist post. I attended and spoke at the rally organized by Graceland Smith downtown. How many board members were there? It was important, and it was historic for this little community. I spoke about my experience growing up as a white girl in a small rural town, and how I never had to worry. I never had to think about where I was going or what I was doing or what I was wearing just because of the color of my skin. I didn't have to think about where I was headed or if someone might say something to me or make a snide comment or that I couldn't go somewhere or I couldn't go out in sweats just because of the color of my skin. I never had to think of those things. I never had to my parents never had to have that conversation with me about what to do if someone said something to you, about what to do if you got stopped, about what to do. My parents didn't have to have that conversation with me. I bet your parents didn't have that conversation with you. Many families come to our district because they've heard that the district believes in equity. I urge you to consider long and hard the message that you're about to send to those families and all of the other families who are like mine and those who believe that this should be a safe place for all students. To censure me tonight would send a clear message that this board is anti-racism, and that our district will allow itself to be harassed into submission by a few who shout the loudest all while blatantly ignoring the multitude who believe that we should be stronger and better than that. And I say that confidently because if we look at the data, because education is all about the data, that we had the number of comments, whether they be letter, email, in person, the number of comments far out, the support for speaking out against racism dwarfs the number of people showing discontent here today, or online, or in an email. So there were 81 comments of support, 81 people, 27 who were discontented. I just want to bring your attention to the fact that a small group of people took a mom's post about her concern for her family and made it about themselves. I'm going to repeat that. A small group of people took a mom's post about her concern for her family and made it about themselves. And that mom deleted her post after only a few hours, but other people decided that it was more important to spread it around and make it into a thing. Being a concerned mom is never wrong. Calling out racism is never wrong. Please do not take this decision lightly. Please consider the message that you're sending to the families who come to this district seeking a place where equity is important, where we value all students, where we value, I don't know, I'm just beyond words. I just can't even believe that we're at this point. And it's really also very interesting to me that the big argument of discontent is that I didn't stop and think about something. I wasn't thinking about, I wrote my post within a matter of a few minutes. I had a mama bear moment. I was very concerned for my kids. I don't know anyone here who's a mom who wouldn't understand that. And so, no, I didn't write a whole dissertation on everything and all of the things behind my words. I didn't write that. So there is a narrative that people are reading into this in a way that is not my intention, that is not what I meant by my words. It is not even close. And they're not even concerned about most of the post. They're only concerned about a very small fraction of it. So, that whole idea of why don't you stop and ask questions or learn more, just somehow doesn't seem to apply to a mom who is concerned about her children. And I'm sorry if people were offended because they read into what I said, because they created a narrative, but it was not about anyone else. It was about my family and my concern for my family. And as a board member, I don't cease to be a parent. I don't cease to be a mother. I don't cease to have concern for my children. And if you can't understand that, I don't even know what to say.
Please. Please.
Listen, please be respectful.
Rachel, I've known you for a very long time, and you're absolutely right. You asked the questions, and I've defended you to people who disagree, but I've always told them, you asked the questions. And I don't know, I can't walk in your shoes to understand what it's like to be a parent of children of color or a spouse of color. I don't, and I wouldn't pretend to know that. And I wouldn't ask, I know there is inequality in our community, and we strive to be better. I know I'm always striving to be better. However, and I wrote this down, I believe in the First Amendment. Absolutely. And I defend it. And I defend everyone's right to express themselves however they see the need to defend themselves, right? I mean, that's why it's the First Amendment. That's the first thing the founders put on the Constitution. However, as an elected official, all of us are viewed with a different lens. And we have to be vigilant in understanding that what we say doesn't just reflect upon ourselves as an individual, but it reflects on a greater number of individuals that we work with. The responsibility we are given as Lake Mills Area School District board members comes with rules that each of us must live by. In accepting this role, we agree that we are held to a higher standard. You take that role when you take the oath and you come up here and sit to make decisions about our children. We all understood that. In making statements that compromise the board's trust from the community that is relying on us to make these decisions is the issue that I am concerned with. And making decisions going forward and having the support of this community is where my concern lies. I understand having what you call the mama bear moment, protecting our kids. My kids can hide. They're white, but they're gay. I'm proud of them for who they are. But no one knows. So when they leave the house, I'm not as nervous for them. But what you said in the way that you said it has been damaging, and it's been difficult for each one of us on this board to work through. So for that, and then I'll be done, Rachel, I would ask you so that we can move forward to resign.
Wow.
Okay. Could you please sit down?
You know, I'm going to go back to the data, and I understand where you're coming from, Dave, but you know what? It's still 81 responses of people who are in support, and so many more who reached out so fast that I don't know them, and they reached out and they said, don't resign, we need you. We need an advocate, we need you. So, you know, I know that there is a loud minority who is interested in going forward with that, and I respect your feelings towards it. But, you know, there are a lot of kids in this community and a lot of people in this community who need someone to fight for them as well.
I don't have any issue with the passion for your family and your, stance against racism.
Dawn,
Oh, I'm sorry. It was, I kind of echoing what Dave said. I think it was the tone, it was the language. I felt it degraded, I'm sorry. It put down members of the community in a very kind of hateful way. And I think I took that personally as a member of the community. It wasn't your anti-racist stance, it wasn't your passion for your family. It was kind of attacking members of the community. That's what I picked up on.
I'm sorry, I did not mean it that way. Like I said, I didn't spend 6 hours writing it. So.
Well, in my mind, this is not a First Amendment question. This is a question about the board and a crisis in governance and our ability to move forward and work for the children of this community. And it's not about the why. There is nothing in this motion that is on the floor that talks about the why. This is not the place for a discussion on racism. There are other things that we can do. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about your conduct. And as others have said, this reflects on all of us. And whether we like it or not, we do give up something to be sitting here. And it'd be a heck of a lot more comfortable to be sitting out there right now. But we're not, we're here. And for better or worse, we're stuck with it. And we have to conduct ourselves in ways that we may not privately want to. So I get it, I understand, but it goes well beyond the why and the motivation. And what is lost here are the comments that were made well before this board had any discussions about the opening of school, and the implication that a decision was being made, and I received many comments from the community showing concern that a board member has already made up their mind without any facts being discussed. So this is not just one item, this is more than one item. So I don't want that to get lost in the process.
And with that, following up, first, Rachel, thank you for being here and for your comments, because you could have zoomed in, so I appreciate that. But I move that the read motion to censor be amended by adding the following words after paragraph 5. Whereas the Lake Mills Area School District Board Policy has adapted a policy that addresses board member ethics in Board Policy 0144.2. Whereas Board Policy 01442 states that, as members of the Board of Education, board members will strive to improve public education, and to that end they will, subpart B, recognize that they should endeavor to make policy decisions only after full discussions at publicly held board meetings. And for that reason, I move that be amended and added to the motion to censor because of the Facebook post on the week of June 22nd, 2020, because of the return to school plan.
So you are making a motion
To
to amend
amend.
the motion?
I'm making a motion to amend the motion to
Is there a
censor.
second to the amendment? Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
I guess
And Megan, do you have,
I'm unclear of what you all are talking about with regard to a
I'm trying to
post
think if we,
about COVID.
procedurally, are we okay on that?
I think we can amend a motion that's on the floor.
that is correct.
Procedurally. It's in regards to your post regarding going back to school on Facebook and talking about going back to school and back to school plans before the board even discussed it. And I think that should be as part of that motion to censure.
When I asked, I wonder what districts will do, I wonder how it will go, I wonder, when it was just me wondering.
It was a public Facebook post.
It wasn't public, and it was, as a parent, I wonder what's going to happen, I wonder. It was a whole bunch of wonders.
Okay.
And I started out with, as a parent, I wonder. And I just was asking questions, I wonder.
I wasn't aware of the Facebook post, so I kind of feel like a little out of touch here. So.
And I didn't talk about this, I said, districts across the U.S. and across Wisconsin and across the U.S. It was just a wondering.
I received multiple, I'm sorry for cutting you off, I apologize that. But I had received multiple people contact me about that post, confusing it with with the board's policy, especially since the board hadn't discussed it, so.
So in spite of what may have been said, what was heard was something much different. If I, because that's the response that I got as well. So the motion to amend is to also relate another school board policy and the number, Ms. Litcher?
0144.2, subpart B.
Okay, any discussion on the motion to amend beyond what we just did? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
John Delaney.
Aye.
Amy Lister.
Aye.
David Radel.
Aye.
Rachel Davies.
Nay.
Robert Shapiro.
Aye. So we have an amended motion. Further discussion? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Amy Lister.
Aye.
David Radel.
Aye.
Rachel Davies.
Nay.
John Delaney.
Aye.
Robert Shapiro.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you very much.